This is a message to Daniel Ek. This week, you completely disrespected pretty much the entirety of the music industry, whether you meant to or whether you didn't. We're talking musicians, we're talking artists, we're talking producers, we're talking engineers, people who own studios, people who own rehearsal rooms, all from one single tweet. Now, I understand that you might not have meant it in a nasty way. The problem is when you are the head of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and that corporation is basically the figurehead of the entire recorded music industry, you have to be really, really careful what you say. Now, I want to make this really, really clear. This is not a rant about Spotify. In fact, I don't want this to be a nasty, negative video about Spotify, because I have a lot of friends who work at Spotify, and I have a lot of time for Spotify. In fact, I spend a lot of my time sticking up for Spotify because there's so many pros. I understand there's some cons as well, but there are so many pros when it comes to Spotify. This idea of like artists and musicians just don't get paid enough is just too much of a simple answer. But this time, Daniel Ek's gone too far. Daniel, what were you thinking when you put this tweet out? And then you put another tweet out trying to backtrack, and you pretty much made it worse. So for anyone who is in the dark, let me read out the tweet that Daniel Ek put out this week. Today, with the cost of creating content being close to zero, people can share an incredible amount of content. This has sparked my curiosity about the concept of long shelf life versus short shelf life. While much of what we see and hear quickly becomes obsolete, there are timeless ideas or even pieces of music that can remain relevant for decades or even centuries. Now, as you can imagine, when you put out a statement on tweet, not something that you said that could be taken out of context, which basically says that music is content and content costs pretty much zero to create nowadays, this is overwhelmingly disrespectful to musicians, artists, creators all across the music industry, all across the entire world. Of course, there was going to be a backlash. I mean, think about the process that goes into creating content. You've got to write the music. You've got to arrange the music. You've got to produce the music. You've got to mix the music. You've got to master the music. Then on top of that, you've got to play all of the instruments or even program them yourself. And if you can't do that, you've got to bring other people in. You're probably going to have to use a studio if you're a band. And let's face it, most people don't want to have programmed drums or programmed instruments. They want to play it. And sometimes they can't play it, so they're bringing other people in. So therefore, what are all these people being paid for? Nothing. Now, apart from that process, this is years of dedication, years of learning, years of education. There are so many costs when it comes to equipment, when it comes to setup, when it comes to production. This is artists failing again and again and again and again, trying to succeed over a period of time. This shows how out of touch that you are as the head of the biggest, let's face it, the biggest music DSP on the face of the planet. And you know what makes this really, really bad for me is in the last couple of months, you've already announced, or pretty much made this happen, you've already said that artists have to hit a minimum threshold when it comes to streams for them to get royalties, which they used to get a few months back. On top of that, within the last 3 months, it has been announced that Spotify has made $1 billion in profit in Q1 2024. $1 billion in the last 3 months. You can see why there's a backlash. You can see why artists are so massively and utterly fucked off. The sad thing about this to me is Daniel Ek should be the hero, the savior of the music industry. When it comes to Spotify, Spotify swooped in at a time when the music industry was on its knees. Recorded music and physical music was being distributed was dying, if not dead. And therefore, you had all the Napsters where people could just file share for free, and Spotify said, look, the cat is out of the bag, but do you know what we can do? We can do a new, different way. And there are so many incredible pros to having a platform like Spotify and other DSPs, but to having a platform like Spotify where your music can be added to playlists that can grow, and yes, you only get paid 0.003 cents for every play, but it's not as simple as just saying artists are underpaid. You know, back in the day when you'd have record shop, a music shop, where you'd have to go in and get off your ass and go to town and buy the music on CD, you'd be like, yeah, I used to get $15 or $20 for a CD. Well, no, you didn't. That's not. There were gatekeepers. The record label would take a lot of money, and it cost a shit ton of money to be able to make music. I can understand what Daniel Ek is saying. He's saying it doesn't have the same costs as it used to. No, it doesn't. But the problem now is all of the DIY artists in the entire world have all of the pressure, all of the responsibilities, which means they should get all of the spoils. If you don't get all of the spoils, why take all of the pressure? Why take all the responsibility? You're needing to make the music, to be your own manager, to be your own promoter, to be everything. And then on top of that, the person who's supposed to be representing you comes out and just says, well, wasn't hard, was it? Just make a bit of music, couple of beats on your on your Mac, throw it on Spotify, you're going to make millions. No, fuck off. Of course you're not going to make millions. It's ridiculous. But Daniel Ek, as the representative for artists, and by artists, I don't mean Drake, I don't mean Taylor Swift, they're fine, they can completely look after themselves. I'm talking about the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of DIY artists that are pouring their heart and their soul and their money into their art, into their creativity, and more importantly, into what they see as not just a passion, but as they see it as a career. You need to be a figurehead for every single one of those artists. Every single artist that goes out and plays to 3 people. Every single artist that pulls their last few quid or their last few dollars into making that money. Every single artist that is sat there writing song after song after song, just thinking something will take. Every artist that is out there with an iPhone or a camera making content, trying to promote their music, which is on your platform. You should be the hero. You should be the figurehead, and you have the ability to be able to do that. Let's look at a couple of very, very simple ways that Daniel Ek, should be able to look after these musicians. Why do we not have, with the amount of money that's going out here, why do we not have Spotify House? Why is that not a thing? In towns or cities across the world, some kind of community-based project where Spotify can buy real estate. Therefore, you're already winning. You're like McDonald's. You're like, yeah, we sell burgers. No, we're a real estate company. Yeah, Spotify can be a real estate company, like YouTube have done, but on a much bigger scale. You can look at studios. You can look at education. Like, where's the fuck is the education? Like, and people like me who've been doing it all of their life, people like me are having to do the education off of Spotify, and you're making $1 billion. Where's the education? And I'm not talking about little bits and little clips on YouTube or little clips on the back of Spotify because you need to tick a box. I'm talking about real, proper education. When you're making all these changes, when there's algorithms, when there's playlist changes, all the things that you can do, why is there not proper education? So when artists come along and say, look, all the responsibility is on me, you just need to tell me what I do and I will do it. That's how I felt. When I was an artist, back in the day, I'd say, I will do whatever it takes. The problem is, no fucker tells you what to do. Nobody tells you what to do. So then you're like, well, if you tell me, I'll do it. If you don't, I'm just stabbing around in the dark trying to figure this shit out. And that is the case for millions of artists across the world. Do you know who's got the answer? Fucking Daniel Ek. Daniel Ek, you've got the answers. You can educate. You can help people. You could set up colleges, universities, online courses. But instead, you're buying stadiums, or you're fucking calling the Barcelona Nou Camp the Spotify Stadium. You're advertising Spotify on fucking children's games like Roblox. What the fuck is that? What about the DIY artists that are struggling the most? Why do we not have Spotify education? Why do we not have grants? Why do we not have scholarships? Why do we not have discounts for certain things when it comes to artists trying to propel themselves forward so that they can put more music onto this platform? Why do we not have proper Spotify venues? That'd be amazing. But I'm not talking about, Spotify venue, let's go and buy Wembley Stadium. No. Let's not go and buy Barcelona Nou Camp and go, look, we bought a venue. That does not help the grassroots artist. Why don't we go and buy venues that are subsidized by Spotify, where up-and-coming artists can cut their teeth? And if you can't afford it, which, let's face it, is bullshit, why don't we have Spotify nights? Why is there not Spotify nights in every town, in every city across the world, so that artists can learn, so they can figure it out, so they can support, so they can get educated, so they can get experience? Why do we not have Spotify rehearsal space? Why do we not have Spotify festivals? Oh, and when I say Spotify festivals, I don't mean paying Taylor Swift to come and go, look, hey, Spotify's a really good thing. That's different. I'm talking about the artists that will be Spotify in 2 or 3 or 5 years' time. These are the artists that you need to look after. These are the artists that will be making you all of the money. But why should they? Why not? In 2 or 3 years' time, when they get to that point, why don't they just go, no, fuck you. Where the fuck were you? Where were you when I needed you? I'll tell you where you were. You were looking after podcasters. You were looking after celebrities. You were looking after collabs with massive artists. You're putting on massive big festivals that don't help the actual artists. This is about grassroots. And to me, what this is actually about is it's not about shareholders, because the problem with shareholders is shareholders, they get looked after. Shareholders get the money, they know the risks, they put money in, they get the rewards if all goes well. It's certainly not the people who pay the $10 or whatever it is a month to actually have a Spotify subscription. What do they get? Well, they get all of the music in the entire world forever. And they get all of the podcasts that you're spending billions on. They get all of that for a couple of bucks a month. They don't need looking after. They've got everything. You've given them the world for literally $10. Do you know who needs looking after? These artists. The artists who are going, I fucking can't pay rent. I can't pay rent. And I'm not asking you to actually pay them more money per stream, because I understand the math doesn't work. You can't just go, yeah, do you know what? Let's put it up to like a penny a stream. That would bankrupt the company, I understand. But that doesn't mean you can't put infrastructure in all of the other places to help musicians just go, look, give me a helping hand. Give me the support. You give me the support, I'll go away. I'll make that music. I'll make better stuff. I'll make collabs. I will make the content that you're talking about, which will fit on your platform so that you can make more money. The problem is at the moment, they're just throwing shit out there, and the only people who've got to help are people like me. It's bullshit. So here's the thing. This really pissed me off because I stick up so much for Spotify. Like, you'll see in the comments, I'm constantly like, look, Spotify has got some incredible pros, and understandably it's got some cons. But this time, Daniel Ek, you need to do one of two things. Number one, you need to invest in real infrastructure, like proper infrastructure for the grassroots artists. Or number two, get the fuck off social media. You're doing yourself and the company a disservice. You can't say shit like that. You cannot accidentally disrespect an entire half an industry and then go, oh, by the way, I think you got me wrong, and then come in with another tweet and make it even worse and just kind of go, no, what I actually meant was, you get cheap microphones. Well, cheap microphones, cheap guitars, things are a bit cheaper nowadays. Meanwhile, I'm working with artists that are working 8-9 hours a day, desperately trying to get 1,000 spins on Spotify so they can figure out the algorithm, so they can start to actually believe in themselves a little bit more. It's nonsense. It's fucking nonsense. Anyway, I don't really know what else to say, but this is bullshit. You should know better. You need proper infrastructure. If you don't know what to do, stop asking people at the top of the tree and come and ask people who are going to look after the people at the bottom of the tree, because there's plenty of those people around. If you look after the people at the bottom, the people at the top are just fine. Look after the people at the bottom, they will look after you, and stop being public enemy number one and start being someone that artists can look up to.